Alrighty. Well, thank you all so much for tuning in. Sorry about the delay. If you just tuned in, I specifically, personally, was having some technical difficulties with the videos that we embedded in the presentation. So we should be good to go, hopefully. As I always say with all our webinars, please just keep in mind that we are adapting like everybody with these new digital times. So we're not,
Each year, 30% of global food production is lost after harvest or wasted in shops, households, and catering
services. Are you guys learning something already? Who is it?
This represents $750 billion worth of food every year.
Okay. Wow. I swear that now we're gonna go. At least we know that the video is working. Okay, so my spiel is that we, like everyone, are just learning to adapt to webinars rather than in-person training, so thank you for understanding that. Okay, so my name is Rosie Briggs, and I am the Eco Leaders Manager with EcoCycle. If you're not familiar with EcoCycle, we are the Boulder County recycler, so anytime you put anything into a bin, a recycling bin in Boulder County, it comes to us in partnership with Boulder County. We also run the Center for Hard to Recycle Materials in partnership with the City of Boulder, and we do a tremendous amount of work on advocacy and education and legislation and infrastructure and all that stuff for composting, recycling, and zero waste in general. So we're so happy to have you here. So that you are aware, this is a webinar style Zoom call. It's not like a regular Zoom call, so none of you have audio or video of yourselves. You can just hear us, the presenters, but you do have access to this little chat box. So you have a chat box and a Q&A box. So the Q&A box we'll use at the end, and then the chat box, you can just kind of put whatever you want in that you want everyone else to see as we go, if you have a little comment or anything like that. We're just getting some hellos in there now. So we are going to do our food waste presentation now. So it's called Food Waste, Why It Matters and What We Can Do About It. And it's part of the Eco Leaders 2.0 training series, which you don't have to be an eco leader to be part of or attend ever. But if you would like to be an eco leader, I will send out more information on how you can sign up. A lot of you are. And with that, I will jump in to introducing our speakers. So again, my name is Rosie Briggs, and so the Eco Leader Network is what I manage and program for. So it's over 1,000 folks in Boulder County and Broomfield and beyond who are trained in zero waste guidelines, and they're kind of just advocates and resources for the people around them in terms of zero waste and sustainability. And there's ongoing education and programming just like this for eco leaders. And I'll send out a sign up after that, or after this training, so that you can sign up if you are interested. And today I am so thankful to be joined by Kate Christian, my wonderful friend and coworker, as well as Dana Van Dale. Is that right, Dana? Okay, great. Yep. From Community Food Share, and they will be doing the majority of the presenting today. So Kate, would you like to introduce yourself now?
For sure. Hey everybody, like Rosie said, my name is Kate Christian. I'm the Corporate Sustainability Manager at EcoCycle. I run the Green Star Business Program, which is a network of businesses that have committed to being leaders in sustainability in their given industry. We have roughly 20 or so businesses that meet and share ideas and help forward sustainability, zero waste, and circularity together. You might be wondering why I'm talking about food. My background is in sustainable food systems. I have a master's from Green Mountain College in sustainable food systems, and I am absolutely obsessed about food systems. I've worked on lobster boats, on ranches. I've worked at cider mills and organic farms. I'm going hunting next week for the first time to see if I could find an elk. I like mushroom forays, so food really is an obsession for me. So I cannot wait to share everything I know, well, part of what I know about food systems with you guys today.
Great, amazing. Thanks so much for joining us, Kate. Dana, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Dana Van Dale. I'm the Food Resource and Compliance Manager at Community Food Share Food Bank. We are the food bank that serves Boulder and Broomfield counties. I've been here almost 2 years and loving every minute of it. So I'm excited to share my wealth of knowledge about food banking and my passion, which is food waste and food insecurity. So thanks for being here.
Yay. Thanks, guys. All right, so now we're just gonna jump right into it. We're gonna talk about food waste, why it matters, and what you can do about it. So Kate is gonna take it away first.
Sweet. So what you guys see on your screen right now is a food system. It's a complex web of activities involving production, processing, transportation, consumption. Issues concerning the food system, including governance, economics of food production, its sustainability, the degree to which we waste food, how food production affects the natural environment, and the impact of food on the individual and population health. This is a diagram of our global food system. We won't be delving into it that deep, I swear. Here's a more simple food system. We're going to be focusing on that center part that you see there. You'll notice that in the center of this diagram, it says sustainable local food system. We're not quite at that point yet. As of this moment, I wouldn't say that we live in a sustainable food system. It's far more disjointed, hardly circular, but still most of the components are still the same. So sustainable or not, our food system's made up of these different stages. So food production, it occurs on farms and ranches. It involves everything from preparing fields, selecting crops and seeds, planting and cultivating, managing pests, ensuring soil fertility, harvesting and managing the crop residue in the field. You know, not hardly anything, right? For processing, some items are only processed minimally, like fresh fruits and vegetables. They're only perhaps washed, sorted, and packaged, where others might have a much more in-depth process, like corn or soybeans that are used to turn into any number of processed products. So everything from sorting bruised peaches to making and adding high fructose corn syrup to your Skippy peanut butter is what's covered in processing. Distribution is transportation. So this is when your food's being driven, flown, or shipped to the next stage of its life cycle. It can travel by plane, freight, shipping container, bike, pedicab, many, many different ways. And then point of sale are markets and food establishments like restaurants. And then finally, consumer interaction. So storing it in your pantry, freezer, fridge, your snack drawer at work, making soup or dinner for friends. This is your part of the story, and hopefully that includes ingestion, right? So whether you buy the item at a grocery store, the restaurant, a convenience store, your food has traveled through many hands. Though if you brought your ingredients for dinner from your local farmer, probably fewer hands have actually touched that. So before we get too into the weeds in what food systems and food waste entails, we should really define food loss versus food waste. They're two really key terms. Food loss refers to food that gets spilled, spoiled, or otherwise lost, or incurs reduction of quality and value during its process in the food supply chain before it reaches its final product stage. So food loss typically takes place at production, post-harvest, processing, and distribution stages of the supply chain, whereas food waste refers to the removal from the food supply chain of food which is still fit for human consumption. So this is done either by choice or after the food spoiled or expired due to poor stock management or neglect. Food waste typically, but not exclusively, happens at the retail and consumer levels, where food loss takes place at the earlier stages of the food supply chain during production, post-harvest, and processing. So in the following slides, we are going to go over each of the stages of the food system, explain why food's getting wasted or lost, and also we're going to talk about how we can help to solve for some of that food waste. All right, food loss during production. I hope you'll all appreciate the number of videos we have in here. I kept thinking back to high school and wishing somebody would roll a projector TV into the room. So we'll get to the video in just a second. Food production losses are greatest for fresh produce, meat, seafood, dairy, different issues that we're just we're not going to dive into today because that's a wormhole. At the farm level, food loss falls into two categories. One, food that's never harvested, and two, food that's lost between harvest and sale. So damage, first one, produce may not be harvested because of damage caused by pests, disease, weather. In other cases, it might be due to economics. So if market prices are too low at the time of harvest, growers may leave some crops in the field because they can't cover their costs after accounting for the cost of labor and transportation. Also, growers may plant more crops than there's demand for in the market in order to hedge against weather and pest pressure, or if they think there's a potential for high prices. So this leads to lower prices in what we would call bumper crop years, and this adds to more crops that don't warrant the cost of harvest. So entire fields of food may be left unharvested and plowed under. This is not a complete loss per se, because the nutrients are returned to the soil. However, it still represents a lost opportunity to provide nutrition. And it's not the highest use of water, energy, and chemicals used to grow those crops. Another cause of unharvested produce is food safety scares. So, quick example, 2008, a warning was issued by the Food and Drug Administration, or the FDA, of possible salmonella contamination in tomatoes. The warning was eventually discovered to be unfounded, but in the meantime, it created a negative perception among the consumers and decreased the overall demand. Because of this, roughly, this is mind-blowing to me, roughly 32% of total US tomato acreage went unharvested. That's 99,680 acres of tomatoes. And if you're like me, you need a visual, that's 131,578 football fields. That just, like, I kind of want to see your faces because there's be shock on them, I'm sure, but it's just a ridiculous amount. Another reason that produce is sometimes left in the field, with changing immigration laws, this problem has become more commonplace, right? So in 2011, the Georgia Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association estimated labor shortages for harvest and packing would cost the state $140 million in crop losses, about 25% of the total production value for those crops. All told, approximately like 7% of planted fields in the United States are typically not harvested each year. This number can vary widely and can occasionally be upwards to, I hate to say it, 50% for certain crops or operations. So to our video, here's a clip from the documentary Just Eat It. Take a look how this celery is being processed in the field and how produce is harvested and what's left behind, if we can get it going.
We're gonna try it in here and then we're gonna see if we have to just switch tabs. We might just have to switch tabs. Yeah, let's do that. Nope. Oh. Isn't the age of technology grand? Aren't we blessed to be alive in 2020?
Aren't you excited that we have like 6 more videos lined up after this?
I thought they'd be loaded after like 10 minutes.
Well, I can walk us through what you would see and, oh,
we're gonna do it.
Perfect.
Okay, ready? I'm gonna let it load for like 5 more seconds. Okay. Seemed like a good idea. Time for an ad.
I will ad lib here what's happening. So they are harvesting celery in the field right now. And everything that you see on the ground behind that gentleman who's taking off the outside is actually spent celery stalks.
You have to peel a certain amount of stalks off so they could fit in the bag. You know, you saw me, that's 1 square foot. And I got probably 2 pounds of product right there. You know, with a little bit of peanut butter and some raisins, you got ants on a log, right? But they're perfectly good stalks. None of us are fans of the waste that we get, you know, because obviously there's a lot of good stuff here you could dice up and put in soups, and we've tried. It just didn't even pay for the labor that it cost to pick it up. So obviously it wasn't feasible.
Sweet, so you guys caught the end of it, the important part, actually. So the reason behind the food loss at this stage of the food system, I don't know if you caught it, but it was the bag. So again, I'm gonna say that again. The bags restrict the amount of celery that was actually being sent to the market. It had nothing to do with the quality of the produce. This is just one example of the challenges that producers have to deal with and that can lead to greater amounts of food waste. Even fields that are harvested may have significant amounts of food left behind. So workers are trained to selectively harvest, leaving any produce that won't pass minimum quality standards in terms of shape, size, color, and time to ripeness get left behind, right? According to an estimate by Feeding America, more than 6 billion with a B pounds of fresh produce goes unharvested or unsold each year. So that's the depressing part of production. We're gonna head to increasing efficiencies during production. So one of the best ways to do this is to get creative. A farmer who had seen 70% of his carrots going to waste because they were irregularly shaped, he had decided to sell baby carrots. After cutting the irregular carrots small, he was able to sell them for 50 cents a pound. Comparing that to 17 cents per pound for the regular sized carrots. That's pretty great thinking on his part. Also, by selling direct to consumers through farmers markets, by the way, farmers markets have more than doubled in number in the past 10 years. So it allows growers to sell good quality products that might not meet size, shelf life, or other criteria that's imposed by large retailers. Another great opportunity is to purchase a CSA or community shared agriculture. If you guys have more questions about that towards the end, I'd love to go into that. Also a really cool thing that you can do is legislation. So California recently passed a bill allowing growers to receive a tax credit for donations of excess produce to state food banks. Joining us in the great state of Colorado and our groovy friends in Arizona and Oregon, we've all been doing that already. California is just joining. So there are some cool opportunities there for producers. Now on to the next part, food loss during processing. So volumes described on labels are calibrated based on normal speed of production. And that takes a few minutes for the machinery to get up to that speed and get warmed up. So what results from that, the first few pallets of packaged food aren't able to be sold because the volume in each pack is less than what it says on the label. So stopping the production line, if there's an issue with it, it actually creates more waste with more things that are not able to be sold. Also, if a manufacturer produces something associated with a food allergy, like let's say breakfast cereal with nuts, and they want to switch the line to produce a cereal that does not contain nuts, the production line has to be run for a significant period of time with the new product before it's actually nut-free, thus creating a lot of waste. Because that cereal, even though it's nut-free, isn't residue-free, right? And the main reason why a manufacturer wastes as much finished produce as they do is because of the policies of their customers, which are often large markets. Along with innovation also comes a lot of trial and error. So you gotta believe that there's a lot of food waste that gets thrown out until the final product makes it to market. And then misprinting is one of my favorites. So anytime a package is wonky, it's usually going to end up in the landfill. So most factories don't have staff that are designated to unpacking food and sorting them into the proper bins, which is very important. So most of that's just going to the landfill. I'll definitely talk about that later. And then aesthetics. So aesthetic standards and consumer preferences, produce that doesn't meet those requirements at any stage in the supply chain are likely to get rejected, either by commercial buyers or final consumers. Growers, shippers, retailers all make decisions about what to cull or to bring out of the food system and waste, remove, lose, whatever word you want to use. It's all based on perceived consumer preferences. So if sellers in any of these supply chain stages anticipate that a buyer won't be able to accept certain produce, they're not going to harvest or accept it. Produce from earlier stages of the supply chain, that is. Also at this stage is the grading of produce, which my friend Dana will chat about in just a moment. In the meantime, we're going to talk about cutting back on food waste and processing. So this might seem like a silly thing, but Heinz redesigned their sauce packaging process to directly fill machines from immediate holding tanks instead of using lining bags to hold sauce. This switch, like, it's mind-blowing to me that this was an innovation, but the switch saved an estimated 3,000 plastic bags, that lining, from being used, and saved the residual sauce inside. And that amounted to 40 metric tons of combined sauce and plastic that were wasted annually that were no longer being wasted. So they evaluated a system that wasn't working for them. General Mills began using a new system to heat pizza toppings so that they adhere better to pizza prior to freezing, saving thousands of pounds of cheese and other toppings each year. Don't ask me specifically how that happened, what type of heating and how that played a role, but they found a design flaw and they changed it. Now this is pre-cut and packaged food. Probably a good thing that I can't see all of your faces right now because I'm pretty sure there are going to be looks of surprise and disgust happening right now, but please hear me out. To the extent that slightly damaged product is made marketable and usable through trimming, the trend of pre-cutting and packaging can help to increase overall efficiency in the system. So since trimming creates more waste at the processing level, it may actually be less wasteful than those products being trimmed at home. So here's another positive to really throw you for a loop, because it is pre-cut, packaged produce may actually lead to increased consumption rates at the consumer level because of its ease and its accessibility. That said, trimmed produce also tends to use more packaging, obviously, than untrimmed produce, which means more associated environmental impacts from packaging production and disposal. Also, trimmed produce spoils more quickly than whole produce once the package is opened. Packaged produce and ready foods are also subject to a sell-by date, that type of wastage, which we will go in depth on a little bit later. They're likely discarded when past the date, whether they're spoiled or not. Whole produce, I don't know if you've noticed, does not have a printed sell-by date, so it leaves more flexibility to evaluate its condition once at the store or in the home. As I mentioned earlier, this is part of the food system that handles food grading, and it's essentially a beauty contest for produce. So Dana is going to come in and talk about grading of produce for you.
Perfect. Thanks, Kate. This part means a lot to me because I've been in quite a few produce facilities that I have to stand there and watch people grade these this produce and just one by one toss it, throw it away. So that really hit home for me every single time I've been to a produce facility. So the need for perfect produce is still there. In the United States, we have the longtime Department of Ag that gives grades and standards for fruits and vegetables. This was developed way back in 1945. It provides the fruit and vegetable and specialty crop growers and buyers with an exact language for describing the quality and condition of produce to be sold, specifying the exact color, size, and quality of the perfect produce. Defining US #1 produce as the premium versus the #2, which is the misshaped, miscolored, bruised, etc., as lesser quality. These standards are essentially market-driven, i.e. the perfect produce that we see in stores. These grades are an outgrowth of the widely accepted principle that price should be directly proportional to quality, with the US #1 demanding the highest market price. It is the principle that the grower who delivers high quality produce deserves a premium price because such produce enables the processor to pack a better quality finished product. Although these standards are called voluntary, produce not meeting those standards gets rejected and wasted. According to one large cucumber farmer, estimated that fewer than half the vegetables he grows actually leave his farm, and that 75% of the cucumbers culled before sales are edible. A large tomato packing house reported that in mid-season, it can fill a dump truck with 22,000 pounds of discarded tomatoes every 40 minutes. And a packer of citrus, stone fruit, and grapes estimated that 20 to 50% of the produce he handles is unmarketable, but perfectly edible. So I'm gonna try to play a little snippet of what I've witnessed many times over. And my heart breaks every time I see it. Hopefully we'll be able to see it. So you'll see the hands kind of, these workers are trained to pick out the ugly, imperfect produce. So one by one, everything that's going on that center belt is waste. Perfectly fine. Might be too heavy, might be too misshaped, but it's all wasted. So when only #1 produce hits the store shelves in restaurants in the US, it causes an enormous amount of food waste. It's because produce is particularly prone to spoil, and even if it has one bad brown spot, we simply just throw it out. It's because of our prevailing cultural beliefs of perfection, lack of education about produce and food handling and storage, buying too much, serving huge portions of food we can't eat, and because of our learned behavior of easily throwing out what we simply don't want because we can easily get more. Plus, in the past, there hasn't been many visible or easily accessed outlets and public solutions to handle cast-off food products to be recycled. There are also no visible penalties for wasting food. A garbage truck simply takes it away. Ugly waste is hidden from sight. It just goes away somewhere. Today, thankfully, more and more growers who have additional product that does not meet fresh market cosmetic standards have found a way to repurpose these by donating them to food banks, selling them to newer markets that sell #2 produce for below market price, and then thinking outside the box by partnering with supply chains to provide this ugly produce to processors to make products such as applesauce, tomato sauce, etc., which would in turn prevent food waste and also support producers and processors alike economically. At an actual record pace, more and more growers and food manufacturers are bringing awareness to the problem with perfect food. And if they can't change the demands from the USDA and society, then they can at least find a way to fight food waste by finding an outlet for the ugly waste that is causing so many problems to our planet and us. There are also nonprofits and apps being created faster than you can click the download button that are combating ugly produce. So, let me just grab that here. Okay, so cue the food waste heroes. These nonprofits and apps are fighting back against the USDA's and society's standards, and they are trying to normalize ugly produce. They are doing this by teaching society that perfect isn't always better, especially when it comes to fighting food waste. We need these nonprofits to help educate and connect people to better options. And the great thing is that the more apps and nonprofits there are, the louder the voices are getting for change. And that is exactly what we need.
And just before we go to the next slide, I just wanted to say that we will send out a very meaty follow-up email, and I can send you guys all of these links and stuff, so you don't worry about things moving on.
Perfect.
All right, so back to the next part of the food system. We're going to talk about transportation. So proper transportation and handling of food are critical throughout the supply chain, particularly with perishable goods that require cold conditions, right? Inconsistent refrigeration is less of a problem today than it has been in the past. Think refrigerated rail cars. But it still occurs when trucks malfunction or are involved in accidents, like you see in the photo. This photo, by the way, is 900 bushels of corn that spilled in Illinois across a bunch of lawns and the road. Other handling problems occur when produce is kept at improper temperatures, such as it's sitting too long on loading docks. So imported products can wait days at the port for testing, significantly reducing their shelf life. I don't know about you, but my bananas and tomatoes barely make it from the grocery store without getting smushed. So imagine the loss that would result from our food traveling such great distances. And then a larger problem that occurs at the distribution stage is that of rejected shipments. So rejected perishable shipments can be dumped if another buyer can't be found in time. So if these perishables do make it to a store, they already have a shorter shelf life by the time that they get there. So that's a problem, right? The average American meal also travels more than 1,500 miles typically. If you're part of a local food system, it's roughly 56 miles. So I think you can tell where my preference lies on that one. And we'll go on to the next slide and we'll talk about the efficiencies in transportation. So employee training to ensure proper handling and storage, as well as proper maintenance of distribution vehicles, can help to keep those losses at a low at the distribution stage. Online exchanges also to find markets for rejected product could lead to faster delivery and less waste. Overall, honestly, distribution probably offers limited opportunities for increased food efficiency. So the best options here, honestly, are to buy directly from your farmer or go to a farmer's market or sign up for a CSA. Oh, this is a good one. Waste at the point of sale. So expectations of cosmetic perfection, right? Many customers select stores based on the quality of the perishables that they are going to purchase. So retailers often feel compelled to have only produce of perfect shape, size, color, and that obviously leads to a lot of culling. Produce arrives in preset quantities also according to case size. This limits the flexibility for produce buyers to purchase exactly what they need. For example, if a grocer wants 50 grapefruits, but they only come in cases of 80, the store's stuck with 30 extras, right? That are more likely to go bad or not be able to be moved as quickly. Stores are increasingly offering more prepared ready-made food in their delis and buffets. On the one hand, this can be a good way to use damaged or nearly expired products if the labor is available to actually do that. But as with produce, store managers often feel compelled that those displays of ready-made items remain fresh, fully stocked, which, instead of letting shelves hold fewer items as they run out, let's take rotisserie chickens, for instance. They might be thrown away and replaced after 4 hours on display. So one grocer estimated that his store threw away a full 50% of rotisserie chickens that were prepared. Many of those were just the last batch of the day. So ready-made food makes up a large portion of food lost at convenience stores, which discard approximately 25% of their food goods. Most retail stores also figure customers will buy more from brimming, beautiful, fully stocked displays, right? Preferring to choose their apples from a towering pile rather than from like a scantily filled bin. This causes overstocking, overhandling, your kid pulling an apple out and them falling on the ground. So it's overhandling by both staff and customers, and damage to items on the bottom from the weight of that produce pile. My personal favorite: damaged goods, outdated seasonal products, and unpopular items. So products are also discarded due to damaged packaging or promotions that have passed. Think holiday items, right? Also, 19,000 or so, give or take, new food products are released on grocery store shelves each year, and many aren't popular with consumers and may be thrown out. Side note, if you have any fun examples of food items that were a flop when they went to market, please add them to the chat. I would love some good examples. All I could think of when I was doing this was the green and purple ketchup that Heinz put out in 2000. So please send that in. Oh, somebody said the same thing already, so that's great. So low staffing and a lack of space. Stores that prepare food on site are able to use damaged goods or food that's past its sell-by date as ingredients. With tight staffing, there's less labor to prepare food on site, therefore less opportunity to use those products. Not to mention, some stores just don't have the capacity or the kitchen space to do that type of processing. So it's not the right answer for many retailers. Expired by and sell by dates. We're going to try another video on this one. It's a fun one.
Hey, Adam here.
In our last webinar, we talked about circular economy and how a lot of products are designed, first of all, to be disposable, but then to become, to break or have you replace it really quickly. And that reminds me of this. So great to hear about.
Isn't that making connections? So we'll move on to the next portion, to stemming food waste at retail. So Berkeley Bowl is a grocery store in California. They estimate that they sell roughly $1,500 per day of produce off of its bargain shelf, which offers bags of damaged or nearly expired produce for like 99 cents. It's a win-win for producer, the grocer, and the consumer. You know, who doesn't love a good bargain? So bargain shelves are a great opportunity to cut down on that waste. Excuse me. We live in an amazing time, right? Technology is constantly changing. Some retailers in the UK are testing the use of this ethylene absorbing strip. Ethylene is a gas that's used to ripen fruits and vegetables, often artificially, so it'll be picked green, and then ethylene gas will make it ripe. So in the UK, they're testing use of an ethylene absorbing strip to prolong produce life. So those retailers estimate that it could save 1.6 million packs of tomatoes, 350,000 packs of avocados, and 40,000 packs of strawberries. Also, by getting creative with marketing, instead of buy one, get one free promotions, you can do a buy one, get one later program like a few other retailers have been doing. I think it's super simple and very creative. Also, commit to change. A number of retailers are committing to action and making their goals and action plan public. Kroger, for example, has a Zero Hunger, Zero Waste social impact plan to end hunger in communities and eliminate food waste across all Kroger companies by 2025. So that's pretty cool. Now we're going to get to food service. So according to the USDA, households and food service operations, so restaurants, cafeterias, fast food, caterers, together lost 86 billion with a B pounds of food in 2008, or 19% of the total US retail level food supply. So plate waste is a significant contributor to losses in food service, resulting primarily from large portions and undesired sides. So like, I don't know, I like most things except eggplant. So eggplant for me probably would be a waste, or I'd force it on my husband. So on average, diners leave 17% of meals uneaten, and 55% of those potential leftovers aren't taken home. So, and this doesn't even touch the food waste that happens when you get to home and when you take your take-home food, your leftovers, and they sit in the fridge. So portion sizes have also increased significantly over the past 30 years. So from 1982 to 2002, the average pizza slice grew 70% in calories. The average chicken Caesar salad doubled in calories, and the average chocolate chip cookie, wait for it, quadrupled. I'm not complaining about that, but today portion sizes can be 2 to 8 times larger than USDA and FDA standard serving sizes. Also, centralized chain restaurants, management can make it harder to manage waste, because although chain restaurants have advanced software and inventory planning, there can be a lack of flexibility for those individual restaurants at that level, and that prevents local managers from reusing food in creative ways. Not to mention fast food outlets. They actually adhere to time limits. So for example, this one's my favorite and most horrifying example. McDonald's fries have to be thrown out after 7 minutes and burgers after 20 minutes. These time limits cause approximately 10% of all fast food to be discarded. By the end of this webinar, 17 batches of fries will be thrown out in every McDonald's. There are 38,695 McDonald's worldwide. So for somebody like me that loves potatoes, that's just a travesty. So let's talk about reducing that food waste. Adapting menus, you gotta limit those menu choices. Half order options also are great things to add to your menu or to allow. So reduce portion sizes with optional refills also, or choices in side dishes can lead to less plate waste. Culinary schools, restaurant associations, and certification bodies can all do their part also to teach and encourage efficient practices in menu planning, inventory planning, accounting. That way it better aligns with sales predictions and purchases. Also, incorporating waste audits into kitchen practice. It has been shown to engage staff and management in identifying opportunities to alter not only menus, but preparation habits, purchasing practices, and prepared quantities. While occasional auditing can be helpful, integrating daily auditing into standard kitchen practice means attention to waste will be continued as part of the operation, right? Involving staff through contests or recognition can also be an effective way to reduce food waste. That's actually one way why EcoCycle provides the service. I don't mean contests, I mean waste audits. It's useful to understand that it's useful to understand what you're disposing, and it can often save a business money, or save businesses money. So that's a great selling point if you do work at a restaurant. And it's a cool activity to do in your home. At least I think it's a cool activity to do in your home. Perhaps at the end of this week, conduct a waste audit in your home. Try not to change your habits until you give yourself a baseline, and then integrate some tips and tricks that you learn in this webinar and conduct another waste audit in another couple of weeks. We can add more information in that follow-up email so you can figure out how to actually do one yourself. It's also really fun for kids, honestly. So another option, I mean, really encouraging your patrons to take food home. Restaurants should urge diners to take leftovers with them, using as little packaging as possible, and preferably in a reusable container. And then laws do exist to protect those that are donating food from liability and enhanced tax deductions or for donations. And Dana will be diving into this a little bit more later. Now, wasted consumption. This one's, buckle up, friends. So cheap, available food has created behaviors that do not place high value on utilizing what's purchased. As a result, the issue of wasted food is simply not on the radar for most Americans, even those who consider themselves to be environmentally or cost conscious. There's also a confusion over labels, which we already heard about, right? Label dates on food are generally not regulated, do not indicate food safety. Multiple dates, inconsistent usage, lack of education around date labels causes consumers to discard food prematurely. Food spoils in homes due to improper or suboptimal storage, poor visibility in your refrigerator, partially used ingredients, and misjudged like food and ingredient needs. Also, impulse and bulk purchases. So store promotions are great. Don't pay attention to them though. Store promotions leading to bulk purchases or purchases of unusual products often result in consumers buying foods outside their typical meal planning, which often then gets discarded, right? Lack of meal planning can also be an issue. No shopping list that can create inaccurate estimates of meal preparation. Also, impromptu restaurant meals can lead to purchased food spoiling before it's being used. And then over preparation is something that we don't really think about too terribly much, but cooking portions have increased over time, and large portions can lead to uneaten leftovers. So the surface area of the average dinner plate expanded by 36% between 1960 and 2007. So just how much food do Americans waste? The United States is a global leader in food waste, with Americans discarding nearly 40 million, with an M, tons of food every year. That's 80 billion pounds of food, and equates to more than $161 billion. That's approximately 219 pounds of waste per person, and 30 to 40% of the US food supply. The average American family of four throws out $1,600 a year in produce. Multiply that by the typical 18 years that a kid lives at home, right? You could easily pay for a year's worth of tuition. So maybe we should stop that. I'm gonna cut back on that a little bit. Start by shopping wisely. Planning meals, using shopping lists, buying from bulk bins, avoiding impulse buys. My personal trick is to put headphones in when I'm at the grocery store, because they've actually done studies on piping in music at the grocery stores, and it changes the way people shop. So if you're causing your own tempo, you're less likely to deviate. Fun fact. So even though volume purchases and promotions may be less expensive per ounce, if part of the food goes bad before you've eaten it, it may actually be more expensive in the long run. Again, understand expiration dates, buy imperfect products. Just as retailers can reduce losses at the farm level by being willing to purchase fruits and vegetables with variations in size, shape, or color, consumers can support more complete use of your fruit and vegetable resources by doing the same, right? Also, buy bananas that aren't grouped. A lot of bananas get thrown out because people will say, I only want 5 bananas in a bunch, and break off 1 or 2 bananas from that bunch and leave them. Start a banana orphanage and take all of the singles so they don't get thrown out. That is one of my favorite, easiest things to do. Freezing unused ingredients is a lifesaver. Food can remain edible for way longer when it's frozen. So freezing fresh produce and leftovers can save what might otherwise not make it to the dinner table before it goes bad. That also goes for dehydrating or canning. Serve smaller portions and save your leftovers. Resources such as like online portion calculators can help consumers prepare for the appropriate amount of food. Uneaten meals can be saved as leftovers for later in the week or frozen and eaten later. And also there's an app for that because it's 2020. So the USDA's Food Keeper app is intended to help consumers understand food and beverage storage and maximize the freshness and quality of items. It can even schedule dates on your calendar to let you know when something needs to be eaten, like right away. It's pretty cool, actually. And then also super easy, create a use first bin. Just label it and put the stuff that you want somebody to see when they open the fridge for a snack right there in front of them. Eat me first. Hopefully that will bring things to light a little bit easier. So this is the breakdown of waste by segment. So through the entire supply chain, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations estimates that 30% of global food loss occurs at the agricultural production and harvest stage, 6% at post-harvest, which is usually like grading is how they're calling that, 3% at processing and packaging, 18% at distribution or at retail and distribution. They link those together, and 42% at consumption. So while the causes of food waste at the end stages of the supply chain have been really well studied, the causes of loss on the farm and in early distribution stages haven't been. So food loss as it relates to fresh fruits and vegetables is especially challenging because those are really highly perishable. Retailers and large food manufacturers would have you believe that the food waste comes from you, but they're also not sharing most of their numbers. So until companies upstream report their numbers, it's going to continue to sound like it's coming from just us. Just know that there's a lot of waste in many different portions of the food system. And then, okay, so here's some food for thought. We're going to play this video.
Each year, 1/3 of all the food the world produces is lost or wasted. Not only does this mean an economic loss, it means that all of the natural resources used for growing, processing, packaging, transporting, and marketing that food were also wasted. Imagine. 28% of the world's agricultural land grows crops that are wasted. That equals the total land area of China, Mongolia, and Kazakhstan. Plus the water wasted in growing those crops equals the annual flow rate of the Zambezi or the Volga rivers, an amount that could cover all the world's household water needs. And as agriculture and fisheries expand into wild areas, overexploit natural resources, forest and marine habitats are lost, along with their biodiversity. Above all, wasted food emits some 3.3 gigatons of greenhouse gases. If this were a country, it would represent the 3rd largest emitting country in the world. This cannot continue. With a future of more people and fewer resources, we cannot afford to throw our natural resources out with the garbage. Let's do something about wastage. Food producers can invest in better harvest and storage technology to avoid food loss. Food retailers can reduce prices of that imperfectly shaped vegetable and donate unsellable yet edible surplus grocery food to those in need. Food not fit for human consumption should be reused to feed animals. Individual consumers can be more careful shoppers, use better methods to store and recycle leftovers, and request smaller portions in restaurants. Small efforts add up. The food wastage pyramid is based on garbage. Policymakers can enhance the ability of producers, retailers, and consumers to turn that pyramid around. For example, develop capacities of food producers to adopt post-harvest technologies. Revise those sell-by expiration dates so perfectly safe food is not discarded. Launch awareness-raising campaigns to inspire consumers to take whatever steps they can to stop food wastage. Reduce landfills through investments in transforming food waste into compost and biogas. The solution starts with you. Each producer, supermarket, household, restaurant, and nation has a part to play. It will take the commitment of all to reduce food loss and waste, so that all the natural resources used to produce food will end up as meals for the world's population, instead of as garbage in landfills.
I love his voice, and he literally was like, reduce!
He said it very eloquently. So, as I'm sure you guys heard in that video, approximately a third of the edible food produced worldwide is never consumed by humans. That's a staggering, again, 1.3 billion tons of food wasted or lost annually. The most technologically and economically advanced cultures in the world have the highest rates of food waste on the planet. And that's even without including the astonishing amount of packaging and carry-out containers associated with our dietary habit. You'd think that nations that are so technologically and economically advanced would be leading the way in reducing and recapturing food waste, but that's just not quite the case. So let's talk about climate change and food waste. I promise things will get happier once I turn it over to Dana, but for right now, you're stuck with me. While the food waste movement across America is gaining momentum, it needs to pick up speed to help tackle climate change. And so the resources used to produce food that is eventually lost or wasted account for approximately 4.4 gigatons of greenhouse gas emissions annually, making food loss and waste the world's third largest greenhouse gas emitter, only after China and the United States. So let's look at this from a different angle though. Who doesn't love talking about calories? According to an energy audit in the US food system, our food system consumes 10.3 calories of fossil fuel energy to create 1.4 calories of food energy. In other words, every time food is lost or wasted, all of that embedded energy that went into producing that food is also wasted. This is a dilemma of not only the loss of calories and nutrients in the food itself, but also food lost and wasted is energy lost and wasted. It represents the arguably unnecessary dispersal of pesticides, carbon, airborne particulates, and other pollutants that are associated with food production. So our nation's agricultural production accounts for I'm going to say that again. Our nation's agricultural production accounts for 80% of consumptive water use and more than half of all of land use. It releases hundreds of millions of pounds of pesticides into the environment each year. It's the leading cause of water quality impairment in the nation's rivers and streams, and it's the largest emitter of nitrous oxide and methane, two powerful greenhouse gases. So farm machines such as tractors, harvesters, combines, they burn diesel fuel, while pesticides and herbicides are technically made from petrochemicals. Processing the food is also highly energy intensive. 17% of food system energy, that's natural gas and electricity being used for cooking, baking, grinding, slicing, and all the other activities that go into your food. Packaging accounts for 5% of the food system energy via the production of plastics, mostly from fossil fuel feedstocks, right? Though some bioplastics are entering the stream, and cardboard. The latter is often recycled, but much end-use packaging is simply discarded into landfills. Listen to any EcoCycle webinar and you'll hear that. Another reason this matters, it makes little sense to invest in new sources of energy, no matter how clean or renewable they might be, if wasted energy isn't being addressed. In summation, here's another video with another person with a British accent, I believe.
Each year, 30% of global food production is lost after harvest or wasted in shops, households, and catering services. This represents 750 billion US dollars worth of food every year, and that is at producer prices. At retail prices, the value reaches $1 trillion, twice the GDP of Norway. If nature asked us to pay the total bill for food wastage, it could charge society at least another $700 billion a year, because that wasted food still caused greenhouse gas emissions and climate change damages, used water for irrigation and increased water scarcity, cleared forests and eroded land, led to loss of pollinators, fishes, and other biodiversity. And there is more. Social costs worth another $1 trillion are caused by food that never added one bit of nutrition to humanity. This includes pesticides' impact on human health, loss of livelihoods as natural resources become more scarce, conflicts induced by pressure on natural resources, and subsidies spent to produce food wastage. But those are only the costs that can be calculated. Food wastage has many more costs that cannot be quantified. Imagine if we quantified the loss of wetlands that purify water, or of biodiversity of pastures, or the value of fish discarded, or the scarcity of essential agricultural inputs such as phosphorus, or the increase in food prices because of less supply. Assigning a monetary value to environmental or social impacts will always be inexact. How to value beautiful landscape or a child's health? However we look at it, reducing food wastages makes sense economically, environmentally, and socially. But not all the food wastage reduction measures are equal. Some are better than others for nature and society. Reducing food loss by raising consumer awareness, or investing in improved post-harvest infrastructures and reducing food loss, means we avoid using natural resources in the first place, leaving them available for the next harvest or future generations. Food that is about to be wasted on the market can best be redirected to charities. Or if it is not up to human consumption standards, then think of feeding it to livestock, so that there is less need to produce animal feed. When you save the food, you save the resources used to produce it. Food waste used to produce biogas is surely a better option than dumping it in landfills, but this wastage reduction measure is the least environmentally effective. All food reduction measures are different in terms of climate impact and use of water, land, and biodiversity. Reducing wastage by not creating it in the first place should be a priority for all.
Fabulous. So just to wrap that part up and recap what he was saying, reducing loss and waste throughout the food system is without a doubt an effective solution to reducing the environmental impacts of agriculture, improving the income and livelihood of the chain actors, and improving food and nutrition security for low-income consumers. So we're going to move into the food hierarchy. Dana, I believe it's you taking this part away.
Thanks, Kate. So the food recovery hierarchy prioritizes actions organizations can take to prevent and divert wasted food. So each tier of the food recovery hierarchy focuses on different management strategies for your wasted or lost food. The top levels of the hierarchy are the best ways to prevent and divert wasted food because they create the most benefits for the environment, society, and the economy. These top levels are where waste can be averted versus diverted. So just to work our way, start from the bottom and work our way up here. As you see, the bottom is landfill slash incarceration or incineration, sorry. So that's the last resort. That's why it's on the bottom. For composting, composting food scraps and coffee grounds, which goes right back into the earth, which is a healthy thing to go back in the earth. Industrial uses, recycling used cooking oil for biofuels, which has been done. Feed animals, using food scraps as animal feed. And then second, to feed hungry people. which was what we do, donating to food banks, and then the very top, source reduction, cooking using fresh ingredients in small batches, and trayless dining and taking only what you're going to eat. So that's the food recovery hierarchy in a nutshell.
So we had already heard food is a really large component of greenhouse gas emissions. Food is also the largest component taking up space in landfills. It takes up 22% of municipal solid waste. Food that's decaying in landfills also produces nitrogen pollution, which causes algae blooms and dead zones. So remember at the beginning of the presentation when I shared this chart with you, what we were talking about here was the local food system. That waste portion up at the top is not going back in. It is not circular. So Miss Rosie is going to take it over and talk about composting from here.
I am going to talk about composting. All right, so sorry, my notes are here, so I'm going to look here. So as Kate just said, here you see the recover arrow going right into the production stage of the chart. And so that means that we want to feed those nutrients back into the production phase. And like I always talk about with recycling, like we think of it as the circular system when in fact we really broke that system. So this direct feed from the recover into the produce stage doesn't really happen across the board because there isn't universal access to commercial composting in the US. And in fact, as it stands right now, only roughly 60% of the US population has access to commercial composting. So here in Boulder County, we can put stuff in our, in the compost bins along Pearl Street or at the carts in our home or in the restaurants that we visit. And that's really not typical for the rest of the country. So without access to the compost, this food waste and organic material will head to the landfill, like we just talked about. And like we just mentioned, organics in the landfill really raise a few big issues. So first, like we talked about, organics in the landfill emit greenhouse gases. So most folks think, understandably, I say this probably 1,000 times a day, most folks think, and I understand why, that when we put food and grass clippings and tissues and any other kind of organic materials into the landfill, then they'll just decompose eventually. But instead, in this airtight environment that is the landfill, they undergo anaerobic decomposition instead of aerobic, which is what they would undergo in normal kind of conditions if you were just to put them in a garden or put them in a backyard compost or put them in the regular compost. And so anaerobic decomposition means that they don't have access to oxygen, which means that they break down very, very, very slowly. And then in the process, they emit methane, which is just a powerhouse greenhouse gas, which is actually 86 times more potent than CO2 in the short term in terms of heat trapping capability. So when we're talking about a warming climate and trying to get ahead of our 10-year or 12-year or 8-year goals in terms of the turning point of climate change, methane is a really big one to get a hold of, especially if, like Kate said, food waste is the single most the prominent component in a landfill. They don't have to be in the landfill. So second, the other issue with that is that we lose those nutrients. So in a landfill, they're being lost. We're not growing food out of anything that's being decomposed from a landfill. So in a compost, they're being fed back into the soils, which then grow new nutrient-dense foods. So we need to heal this natural cycle of nutrients that has been broken in our soils when we took this cyclical system and we replaced it with a linear system. So those circular systems, speaking of them, should be as local as possible as well. So Kate has been talking a lot about making things local. So that distribution piece does come into play when we talk about that compost as a product. So currently the stuff that you put in to the compost bins around Boulder County are heading to A1 Organics, which is, we are huge fans. They're great. It's a commercial composting facility. It's like literally just a huge plot of land where there's just piles of compost that get hot enough to break stuff down that wouldn't necessarily break down in your backyard, like, a chicken bone or, a corn plastic cup or anything like that. But the problem with that is that it's not as local as possible. It's about 100 miles round trip. So we have to send these big ol' heavy full trucks, and organics are really heavy, 100 miles to drop off your stuff. So to that effort, Boulder County is fulfilling a long-standing community need of building a local publicly owned compost processing facility. So that will not only reduce the emissions issue greatly, but it'll also provide a closed loop on compost and food waste locally. So we can take this compost and we can apply it to soils locally, which actively draws CO2 out of the atmosphere, which is called carbon farming. And then building this facility will really help all of us who are contributing to that compost then be able to see the whole system and be bought in and be invested in, you know, if I understand, because I see the facility, I see the compost that comes out of it, I put it on my garden. I understand that if I put a solo cup into the compost, that a solo cup is going to stay in the compost, and then I'm going to have to put it on my garden. So it just, you know, rather than out of sight, out of mind, and, you know, it feeds into this whole idea of there is no way. We can be part of every piece of this this process that we see here, which is local and cyclical. So you can help this compost facility come to fruition, and I will send you some information on how you can be a part of that. The county is asking for input, and we're just going to need some support on getting kind of public buy-in, since it is going to be a community facility. So all of that being said, that whole spiel about compost being amazing, like we just said, like they just said in the video, compost is not the ultimate answer. And I say this all day long with recycling as well. You know, as recyclers and as people who promote composting and composting infrastructure and all of that, we're the first to say that that's not the solution, right? So even if you buy something that's recyclable, the best thing to do is to avoid that thing if you can, and not create that waste in the first place. Same with composting. If you have something, exhaust all of your other options on this hierarchy that we had. So if you can donate it, like just because you can compost it, don't let all of these other things that we've been talking about slip by you. Like we have to do all of these tips that we've been sharing tonight before you compost, and then that is what you have at the end, but it's not the ultimate silver bullet like we like to think that recycling and composting are. So yes, I will send out stuff about the composting facility, and that is my spiel on composting. So I'll turn it back over to some good news.
So I'm actually not the one who gets to talk about the good news. So we've shared some really big solutions, right, that take legislation, funding, many and diverse stakeholders, and achieving this is beyond the scope of this talk right now, but there are amazing things that are being done locally right now. And Dana, you are the one who's going to have to take this part over.
Thanks, Kate, and I'm very happy I get to be the good news part of this webinar. So I would like to introduce you to Community Food Share Food Bank that serves Boulder and Broomfield counties and is a proud member of Feeding America. And I am a very proud employee to work at this amazing food bank. To see what gets done here every day, it makes my heart very happy. So I'm in a good place. So at Community Food Share, we're more than a food bank. We're a neighbor and a friend who's been part of the fabric of Boulder and Broomfield counties for decades. We know that ending hunger in our community requires collaboration. That's why we not only provide food directly to families, seniors, students, and others, we're also a hub, delivering millions of pounds of food a year to local partners to reach people in their communities. Because when we work together, we give more people access to fresh, nutritious food. So Community Food Share's mission is to eliminate hunger in Boulder and Broomfield counties through engagement, collaboration, and leadership. In fiscal year 2020, Community Food Share distributed over 11.2 million pounds of food, with 76% of it being fresh produce, dairy, or protein. And just so you, it's not much of a visual, but that's enough food to serve 25,000 meals a day for a whole year. In Boulder County, 9.7% of people are below poverty level. In Broomfield County, 4.9% of people are below poverty level and are food insecure. Our goal at Community Food Share is to distribute 100% of the food that is donated to us to people in need. But sometimes food donations come to us with some misfits. Bread is stale, spinach is past its prime, or potatoes have grown a few too many eyes. How we handle these misfits is truly innovative. So how we combat food waste here, Community Food Share rescues safe surplus food from going to waste so that it can instead help nourish those struggling with hunger. Food acquired through food rescue is primarily perishable. Retail grocers, farmers, producers, distributors, and food service operators donate food that is not profitable to sell, close dated, overstock, seasonal, or cosmetically damaged. And thanks to the Good Samaritan Food Donation Act, companies and organizations are encouraged to donate healthy food that would otherwise go to waste, and they are protected from criminal and civil liability under the Good Samaritan Food Act. In fiscal year 2020, Community Food Share rescued 6.9 million pounds of food from the landfill. 5 days a week, we pick up from grocery retailers around Boulder and Broomfield and Longmont and rescue 13 tons of food a day. And that is equivalent to 132 baby elephants, which is, that's pretty heavy. We have an on-site garden share coordinator, which happens to be myself, who coordinates with local farmers to pick up or glean extra produce that was planted but not sold and otherwise would have been tilled under. More on this program that we do a little bit later. For food that we rescue that turns out to be unfit for human consumption, we have 3 outlets to help us not waste. We give moldy bread, sweets, and produce and expired dairy to local farmers for animal feed. We give our unedible frozen meat to local wolf sanctuaries. And then we also have a compost bin, thanks to EcoCycle, and we compost most everything else. So very little gets wasted here. Last year, we repurposed 368,000 pounds of unusable or expired produce, dairy, and bakery items. So we're going to try to play this, this Feeding America video for you to give you an idea of what we do. What happened to the sound?
In America, 72 billion pounds of food go to waste each year. At the same time that millions of Americans struggle with hunger. And this is safe, edible food that just hasn't reached people that actually need it. The largest source for food that goes unused is actually at the farm. We work with farmers to be able to pick the product that's left in the field after harvest.
We have a very deep relationship with the San Luis Obispo County Food Bank. Often it's gleaning where folks are coming in and harvesting product.
A lot of the produce that we harvest, it's all perfectly edible to eat. It might just be a cosmetic issue or a time issue for the farmer.
I think it's cool that the food bank helps rescue the food so it doesn't just go to waste and you don't get anything.
When you think about the other sources of wasted food across the food industry, manufacturing is another place. One example in terms of how we work with manufacturers is with our great partner, General Mills.
A few years ago, General Mills came across an opportunity where we had snack bars that had peanut butter chips or peanuts in them. The cardboard box that they were in did not disclose that allergen. And rather than send all of that product to a landfill, we worked with Feeding America and their volunteers to actually unwrap these bars from their packaging, put them into plastic bags.
Label it correctly so that every package carried that allergen label. Our next large opportunity is the food service industry. At the end of the day, food that's not sold is then pulled from the shelves and we're able to pick it up.
So this food is getting to folks in need the very next day. It's really great, fresh, nutritious, ready to eat meals.
When all these programs come together and you look at the ultimate impact, 62% or 2.8 billion pounds of food that we distribute each year is food that would have otherwise gone to waste. So while we are doing a lot in partnership with the industry, there's so much more to do. Connect with your local food bank and see how you can help rescue more food and help feed more people.
It's a great video. So here at Community Food Share, we have our Garden Share program. And our Garden Share program encompasses several growing and harvesting programs that bring freshly grown food to Community Food Share and fights food waste that is left in gardens and farms. And thanks to the Colorado Charitable Crop Donation Act, local producers and farmers that donate food like lettuce, corn, squash, meat, eggs to food banks can receive a 25% tax credit based on wholesale value of the goods donated. So we work with home gardeners and farms. For home gardeners, they share their bounties by donating freshly picked fruits, veggies, and herbs. Through our longtime collaborations with Earth's Table and Garden to Table, volunteers also grow and harvest produce for Community Food Share. This year we had a Garden Share farm stand in the front of our building that made it really easy for contactless garden donations. And I haven't gotten a final count yet, but I think this might have been our biggest year yet. We also go to farms. Farms are so gracious, and they share their unharvested, unsold crops and CSAs that might have not been picked up or someone wanted to skip this week. They do this year round, and they are kind enough to also invite our volunteers to glean onto their farms, to glean produce that would have otherwise been tilled under. Community Food Share also collaborates with Uproot Colorado, which is one of my favorite organizations. And we collaborate with them for on-farm gleans. Uproot harvests surplus agriculture from Colorado farms in order to reduce on-farm food loss and food insecurity throughout the state of Colorado. Their mission is to measurably reduce surplus agriculture in Colorado, support the economic stability of farmers, and increase the nutritional security of Colorado residents. And I know I thank them every day that I can get for their partnership. In fiscal year 2020, Community Food Share received 57,000 pounds of fresh produce from over 38 local farms and gardens throughout Boulder and Broomfield. We have on the bottom here, you can sign up for a Garden Share program year round, or you can just wait till next growing season. It's a great way for us to keep track of people's gardens and what they're growing. Let's see. So this, next slide. So this year, Boulder County came out with a program called Grow and Give. It's an initiative that was in collaboration with the CSU Extension and various local organizations. The City of Boulder invites both new and experienced growers to participate in this modern Victory Garden project. I love that. I love that saying, Victory Garden. Our goal this summer was to donate 2,500 pounds of fresh produce by the end of the growing season from participating Boulder County gardens. And as of the end of October, Boulder and Boulder County residents, had 155 participating gardens and harvested close to 4,900 pounds of produce for neighbors in need. And that produce was also, they partnered with us and Boulder Food Rescue. And so that was kind of divided between the two of us. So we really conquered a lot of square mileage there. And then there's also a link for that to participate for the next growing season as well. And then Boulder Food Rescue also has an app. You can also download the Fresh Food Connect app if you live in Boulder or Longmont. Right now it's only valid in those two cities.
And I'll send out both sign up links after this.
Right. So let's see, So progress, again, with the good news. I love it. Thanks, Kate, for leaving this all for me. Progress. So on April 9th, 2019, the USDA, EPA, and FDA signed a formal agreement with ReFed, another one of my favorite organizations, to collaborate on efforts to reduce food waste in the United States. The 3 agencies in REFED agree to develop approaches for measuring the success of food waste strategies, advance data collection and measurement efforts, and to participate as appropriate in the Further with Food Center for Food Loss and Waste Partnership, among other activities. And on the 30th of October 2019, the USDA, EPA, and FDA announced a new partnership with the Food Waste Reduction Alliance. Through a memorandum of understanding that the USDA, EPA, and the FDA will formalize industry education and outreach efforts with the Grocery Manufacturers Association, the Food Marketing Institute, and the National Restaurant Association, the 3 founding partners of the FWRA. So what all this means is that the word is spreading fast, and people are no longer turning a blind eye to the food waste and food loss problem that we have in the United States. So keep talking.
All right, so to wrap up, we still have, technically this webinar goes till 7:30, just because we wanted to have time for you to take advantage of these experts and ask them your questions in the Q&A box, but we're just going to wrap up before then. And so I just have our contacts here. Again, I will send out the email with including those contacts, but just so you have them. So included in the follow-up email will be our kind of sources that we cited with the data that we provided you, additional reading and viewing if you want to go further with some articles, some videos, and learn more. I'll send a link to become an eco-leader if you want to do that, and it just involves being trained on the guidelines of recycling and composting in Boulder County. If you live outside of Boulder County, we can talk about that too. And then there's so many ways that you can be involved as kind of an ambassador for sustainability and zero waste in our community. I'll send out those links for Grow and Give and Garden Share and the app that we mentioned, Community Food Share, newsletter sign up, and then how to support the Boulder County compost site. And anything else that we might think of between now and then. And if you think of something that you want me to send out, then maybe shoot me an email and put it in the chat. And with that, I think we're gonna go to questions. So I'm gonna stop sharing. This is an amazing photo. I think I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so that I can see the Q&A box a little bit better. So the chat box, I'll still see it if you put it in there, but try to put your questions in the Q&A box so we can be a little bit more systematic about answering them.
Sorry, I just want to chime in real fast. That chicken is Pumpkin. That chicken is my mom's chicken. So thank you to Judy for letting me co-opt that photo, because dear God, does she have sass.
Amazing. Thanks, Judy. All righty. Okay, so can the products wasted on the line when they start or stop the line be donated with notes that they are misweighed, etc.? Do we know?
That's a hard one. I mean, that's a hard one just because that factory is not set up for that. And just like a sustainability position in any other type of business, lots of times that is the last thing that's on anybody's mind for hiring. Unfortunately, in the food sector, especially the closer you get to the farmer, the margin for profit is much smaller. Where they're making more money is during processing and retail of the product. So yeah, they could do it if they had enough staff, and they also had the ability to find additional trucks to route them to an entirely new place, a new facility, and it's a completely different type of efficiency issue that they come into contact with at that point. But I mean, yes, because I hesitate to say no, but it's hard.
It's hard, but it doesn't have to be hard, Kate. It's like my job is to go into these facilities and educate what they can do and how we can make it easier for them. So to donate and to guide those misfits elsewhere. So.
All righty, great, and thanks Rachel for that question. All right, Mary. Hi, Mary. No. How much crop waste is being eaten by animals?
I don't have the specific percentage for that. I can't believe I remember this. 86% of what is eaten by livestock is not fit for human consumption or technically considered inedible, but there's a reason we didn't get into food or to meat and dairy as much. Those are a little bit more complex and have their own challenges. So maybe if we didn't mess this one up too much, Rosie will invite us back and we can talk about that food system a little bit more.
Well, never again. All right. Hannah, hi Hannah. Knowing that most restaurants do not allow your own take-home containers, or at least most people do not bring their own, what's the lesser of two evils? Extra waste from packaging or wasted food?
I would say take your own anyway. Nobody typically is standing at the table telling you that you can't take it. If it's takeout, it's a little harder, especially given COVID right now.
Yeah.
You kind of just have to respect where people are at and where businesses are at. There's a really cool app for that, because we're just going to keep saying that throughout this presentation. There's an app called Plastic Score. It started locally, I believe. But you can go in and you can track what types of takeout containers there are at a given food establishment. And you can also go and if you end up going somewhere and you're like, well, it said it's compostable on the app, and you get there and it's polystyrene or styrofoam, you can put that in there and it changes the number of stars. I think it's actually the number of turtles that they get for their rating system. So I would say look at something like that. They've actually worked with EcoCycle to help figure out where that rating should lie. So that would be the best bet.
Yeah, that's what I would say as well. As I mean, obviously with COVID, you have to just kind of see, where they're at. But what I always do, like if I know that I'm going to take something away, or even if I don't, if I'm going to like Mod Market or Native Food, whatever, I will just bring a glass, Pyrex container and then order it for here. And then when it comes, just slide it into my Pyrex container. And that's different than handing them something that they then take behind the counter and deal with, which is what they can't do. But I always just kind of order it for here and then slide it and then go. And if you just keep kind of like containers and jars in your car for leftovers as well.
Doesn't everybody do that?
Yeah, right? I'll have a jar bag in our car, right? Okay, Jill. Hi, Jill. Jill just got a new dog named Omelet. I want you guys all to know that. Okay, she says, it seems obvious to me that our American food systems aren't optimized for feeding as many people as possible. So what are they built for, in your opinion? Maximum distribution, maximum profits?
Dana, would you like to take that? I'm talking a lot. So
No, I think that's better for you, actually.
It's an antiquated system. That's really what it comes down to. I think saying that it was designed for something is just giving it a lot of credit.
Yeah. Too much credit.
There's a lot that just kind of landed where it did, where it was people making compromises, businesses making compromises. A lot of big corporations are involved in our food systems. Again, that's for a completely different time, and that is a wormhole that to be explored over bourbon. But that's I think that's really what it comes down to, is you need to look at it as something that was started in the early 1900s, where women didn't have the right to vote. People of color didn't have the right to vote. We're not living in that same system anymore, but our food system still kind of operates as that, and our transportation system's also antiquated. So it comes down to, we're just not making the best decisions right now. We're not making evolved decisions, because we're still part of an old system.
Yeah, I talk more about things like plastic than I do about food, but I think it's the same kind of answer, where it became something that we started to do without necessarily making a long-term goal for anything, and then it became a societal and cultural thing, and then now it's hard to uproot that. Okay. Cool. Someone just said, does a desert environment make composting harder? Do you guys know?
every environment is challenging for a different reason with compost. So if you look at here on the Front Range, it's going to be challenging because we have bears. So there's a completely different, oh my God, who's this?
She was screaming to get let up, and you were talking about turtles, and her name is Turtle.
So that she
like,
listened.
Someone
just said her name. So I would just say, I don't think composting is harder. It's just different. It's a specific balance for the area that you live in. Carbon, nitrogen, moisture, heat is a big component of that. So I would recommend reaching out to your local like farmers association or gardeners. A lot of really groovy like nurseries can help you with compost. McGuckins out here does that. So I just reach out to those people who know better than we do. I'm from Buffalo. I didn't grow up in the desert, so I have a very different experience with compost.
But I also think that the fact that you don't have a compost facility or, you know, compost carts, that doesn't, I mean, like I said, only 6% of people do in the US. And so, you know, there's a lot of places that are not desert that could build that infrastructure, but don't. And I think it just takes some advocacy and infrastructure and campaigns and all that good stuff. Okay. Hannah says, is there an estimate impactful number of how much food waste contributes to climate change, or how much of an impact we can have with reducing waste to carbon emissions?
It was 4.4 gigatons for greenhouse gas emissions, which if you are interested in what that converts to, because we live in the US, it's, hang on, I got it queued up because I figured this was a question that was going to be asked. 1 second. Let me add the commas because it looks longer than a security or social security number, because it is. This is the number of pounds that equals in greenhouse gas emissions. Again, it is one of the top 3 contributors below the US and China for greenhouse gas emissions. So that's a lot.
You just said Project Drawdown is a good resource to put that in perspective of other GHG emitters as well.
For sure.
Cool. Okay, big numbers. Do you know the percentage of local supermarkets and food banks that send discarded produce to compost facilities? Are there supermarkets where we can talk to managers about the need to compost their discards?
That's
Dana,
a good one.
Take it away.
I'm laughing because it's hard to retrain like an army when it's just you. I go to these stores constantly, and it's and there's a lot of turnover. It's a bit of a mess, but thankfully, Feeding America is because it's a national nonprofit and well known and really good at educating about food waste and food insecurity. So I kind of have them behind me, but it's like wrangling cattle to try to get them to know the difference between food that's donatable and things that they should compost. And their main job is to get the food out to sell. And they I wish they had more time to compost. I do. Or to think once or twice before putting something that shouldn't be put into a donated bin for us rather than the compost. But it is a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
I'd also reframe it as well from our standpoint at EcoCycle, waste aversion versus diversion. And I know we talked about it during the presentation, but really looking upstream to keep it from getting to that point, because you're talking about folks that are working maybe part-time jobs or seasonal jobs, and you're asking them to go through and know the proper way to sort things into specific bins, take that time to do it. And most stores are not designed for that. So like in Boulder County, or in the city of Boulder, you have a universal zero waste ordinance, so composting is mandatory. It's not the same. Again, I'm from Buffalo. We don't have to do that there. So it's all about framing it. And also the term local is set by different states. So here in Colorado, I believe we're 250 miles. Anything within 250 miles is considered local. So that changes state by state. Those are all things to consider. I feel like I'm giving you like an etymology lesson here, not trying to, but that question's really loaded because there's just so much in there to unpack. And we're expecting folks who are, I don't want to say way down the ladder, but folks who have less reason to unpack all of that. And we're asking them to fix an entire food system and make sure it gets to where it's going, when it should be the corporations like Kroger making their commitment, right?
And just as a note, Sandy Briggs, whom I am not related to, but I am great friends with, she put in the chat that PACE, which is Partners for a Clean Environment, does a lot of work on getting compost into businesses in Boulder County as well. So just as a resource there. What was the app that we talked about? Lori, I put it in the chat way back here. The Fresh Food Connect app. That was the one for Boulder and Longmont. And then there's another app also that somebody put in the chat, which I promote a lot, that I don't know that it's taken hold very well yet, but it's new. It's called Share Waste, and it connects folks who have food waste that needs to be composted, or just whatever, organic waste that needs to be composted, with someone who has access to a compost, whether they're like a farm or they have a backyard compost or they have a curbside bin. So it's called Share Waste, and I believe it's everywhere. I don't think it's specific to this area. All right, can we talk about prepared foods and how hard it is to rescue that, like catering, and maybe more specifically, what are the biggest hurdles and what are recommendations for overcoming them? Like, what are some successes?
Yeah, prepared food for food banks is a hard one. Food pantries, it might be a little bit easier. But prepared foods, it's a food safety issue. I think that's probably the biggest issue with prepared foods. Whether, it's leftovers from a cater event, you have to take in an account how long it's been out. How did you cool it? How was it cooled? Was it cooled properly? My favorite is one of my good friends does the same thing I do, but in Las Vegas, for the Las Vegas Food Bank, and picking up from all the casinos and everything. They have such the state-of-the-art blast cooler that is able to cool the temps in a safe manner. And we unfortunately don't have that, but we and we don't get a lot of prepared food, at least here. With my former employee, We Don't Waste down in Denver, we did, and we were that's kind of where I learned my serve safe knowledge and my food safety. But it's just the amount, if we would probably be, because my theory is we only like to pick up enough food that if you'd be able to serve it to enough people that would come in. So it's hard for me to pick up something that would only serve 20 people when we serve 200 people. So that's when the smaller food pantries come into play. And we train them, at least our partner agencies, we train them in food safety. So they should know what to take and how to take it. But I think if it's done properly and carefully, I think prepared food is another industry that could be worth partnering with in Boulder and Broomfield counties. Especially, there's quite a few soup kitchens that we serve. So it would give the chefs there a night off if all they had to do is really just heat the food back up. So that would be useful. I don't know if that answers your questions or not.
Yeah. Thanks. Somebody just said, are there grocers locally that sell ugly/misfit produce? So I just I said that I would plug Esch's because Becky put it in the chat. And Becky is a awesome Lafayette resident, and she turned me on to Esch's, it sells secondhand food. And a lot of it is like kind of like the stuff that Kate, you were talking about, like, oh, these are Christmas colored cookies, but it's not Christmas time. Or yeah, like expired things based on their date and kind of ugly produce. So I go there, but I think in most places, if you just Google map like discount groceries, there's some kind of thing like that. And I know that at like Natural Grocers, they have an ugly produce little cabinet that you can buy bags of. And
so does King Soopers. King Soopers also. It's hard to find, funny enough, but they do have a section there.
Great. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Then we have 2 more. We have 4 more minutes. Question for Dana. Can non-consumable vegetables such as potatoes with eyes be used to grow more food?
Mohammed, that's a hard one. I don't know. I'm gonna have to ask my farmer friends tomorrow. I honestly do not know. That's a good one. I'll ask tomorrow when I'm at Ask the Moon. You can? Yeah. Okay, there you go, Kate.
You can with so many different vegetables. I highly recommend Googling it. You can do it with celery. You can do it with onions. You can do it with potatoes. Wow. You can do it with carrots. You can do it with certain herbs like cabbage, romaine. It is such a fun thing to do with kids. By kids, I mean for myself, I get excited about it. So I'm assuming a kid would get excited about it. But there's so many different things, and then you can cut down on your grocery bill that way as well.
I learn something new every day. Look at that.
Ooh-wee. All right, and last one. Are there any notable upcoming mandates to divert food waste on the horizon at the state or national level?
I sure hope so.
In 2017, more than 33 bills addressing food waste were introduced into 12 states. So that's everything from dating the packaging to like expiration to creating like composting system. Like it's so many different things that it's really hard to tell. Colorado's doing a really great job, honestly. We could do better. So I think that you gotta look in your area specifically. This is not like it's a global problem. There's no national answer for it right now. I would say look as local as you can and get involved. And I don't know, maybe we at EcoCycle can start reporting on that a little bit more if we find some upcoming legislation.
Maybe we can write some.
Done.
Kate, get on it.
Oh, I already have a folder. I'll just pull it out.
All right. Someone said Jeannie said, I planted sweet potato vine in a flower pot. When I went to clean it out this fall, I found 4 huge sweet potatoes.
Oh my gosh.
Amazing. Makes me feel better about all the McDonald's fries. That really got me, you guys. I feel like my whole role in this webinar was to like, since we can't see anyone's faces, for me to be like the reaction.
The whole entire presentation, like my part of it was composed around that statistic because it bothered me so much.
Yeah, Kate, for those of you who don't know Kate personally, I love potatoes and Kate loves potatoes because you can tell that we are Irish, and she on hikes, if she's bored, she'll just name different types of potatoes, and that's just something that she does.
Everybody does that, right?
Put that potato statistic in context. Okay, guys. Well, that was great. What a great timing. It looks like we're out of questions and it's 7:29. So to wrap up, I want to just give the biggest thank you that I can possibly give to Dana and Kate for their amazing expertise. So many good comments here saying that it's infectious, they give so much good information. I so agree. I, again, will send out that big beefy email tomorrow. We're going to go to bed and not do it tonight, but we're going to do it tomorrow. And so then we can get all of your information. You can mull over all of this data when you go to sleep and dream about sweet potatoes in the pots. And then you can get all of your resources to check out and follow up with tomorrow. And then I'll also put the 3 of our contacts in that email so that you can reach out to us directly. So thank you all so much for tuning in. what a great time to chat with all of you guys, even if I can't see you. Dana, Kate, do you have any parting?
No, thanks for letting me be a part of this. This was really an adventure move for me. I'm pretty low key and I kind of hide in the background. So this was a challenge for me and I loved every minute of it. So thank you for letting me do this.
Yay, thank you.
I mean, I'll talk for another second. Get ready for that extra email coming because there is a lot of information in there, like a lot of information. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have questions about that information that's in those links, because again, it's books and documentaries and articles. It's a huge topic. So please don't hesitate to reach out. All of us are passionate about it.
Cool. Okay, great. Well, amazing. And I have also recorded this and I will send it, the recording and the slide deck also with all of that in case you want to just relive all of this again. Okay, well, thank you so much. Have the best evening and I will look forward to talking to ideally all of you soon.